Intuitive, but does it help Donald Trump to have his mic cut? Because during the last debates, last go around, it was the overtalk that turned a lot of voters off from him. So could this counterintuitively again help the campaign?
The honest answer is I don't think we know until we see what happens. There's been a lot of speculation that not having an audience would deprive Donald Trump of, those people in the crowd cheering for him that he thrives on. And that may be true. But we also know that The Apprentice didn't have a live studio audience for him to feed off of. And while the tapings might not have always been the smoothest run thing, The Apprentice is the most consequential TV show to ever air.
Yeah, but I don't know
not
if you
having
can
an audience,
compare The Apprentice to a debate. I think those two things are not like for like.
I think we know that Donald Trump knows how to use a camera better than anybody in our political history, potentially even including Ronald Reagan. And so we think we know all of this before it happens. I don't think we do. Cutting the mics, a great decision. Not having an audience, a great decision. When this was announced, I said, praise be to Mark Preston and Sam Feist at CNN for doing this.
Yeah.
But to know that this is an advantage for one or the other, who are both elderly men, who both haven't done this in a very long time, we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, but, the comparison to Reagan, I get, but he sailed to re-election, and Donald Trump's not sailing to a re-election.
Neither is Joe Biden.
Yeah,
right.
I know, but you're not comparing Joe Biden to Reagan. You're comparing
no, I am not.
Trump and his TV ability. Okay, Jen, what do you make of these rules? Do you think that what do you think of them?
I mean, Doug paints a good picture of that. It may be, that Trump doesn't know how to use a camera. And he has a smart team around him. And if they decide to do something other than we expected, there could be a scenario where the rules work for Trump. But if you look at them based on past behavior, I don't see anything in the rules that is a benefit to Trump. And they all seem to be something that would help, that would make it a better environment for Biden. And I'm with you, Katie. I don't understand why Trump agreed to these rules. And, Vaughn said, well, he's been saying that he would do it anytime, anywhere, but it's not as if Trump stands by his word or anything. So I am still surprised that they said yes right away to CNN. They said yes right away to ABC, and that they've agreed to these rules.
How high are the stakes for President Biden? Is anybody saying that? Yeah, tell me, how high are the stakes?
Sorry, Katie. They are very high, and I think that he and his team are going into the debate not with a lot of confidence. Not a lot of bravado, but this was I think they really believed that they needed to get the two of them on stage so that the American people would understand this is what the contest is going to be. Nothing is going to change that, because there's still people who expect somebody other than Biden, other than Trump, to be the nominees. And also for people, to make Trump own his record on Roe. You notice the vice president over the weekend was referring to abortion bans in the United States as Trump abortion bans. Make sure people understand this happened. Donald Trump is responsible for this, for the situation. To make it clear that the reason why there's not a real border bill is because Donald Trump stopped that from happening. And if you have them on stage like that, Biden can lay down, even whether Trump cooperates or not, Biden can be laying that down, and you're going to have a big audience. And it's going to be more important than conventions. I think and they're going into it feeling confident about his ability to perform.
Let's go back to the reporting for a second. Vaughn, the Supreme Court is going to come up, and abortion is going to come up. Donald Trump has been able to take every position imaginable on the subject of abortion over the past few decades, but even so in the last couple months. How is the campaign planning on responding to that? Is it the same version of what he's been saying recently, which is that it's a states issue?
Right. He's obfuscated repeatedly on the question, right? Really ever since Roe v. Wade was overturned, outside of claiming that they were able to achieve the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which no Republican was able to do in the last 60 years. Outside of that, when it comes to actual details, that's where he has continually tried to sidestep. He hasn't even answered on how he'll vote on Florida's measure, right? He's going to be a Florida resident, and even that simple question he is sidestepped. And so I think for Joe Biden, this is where that contrast is an opportunity for him to provide, saying these are questions that are being debated in Oklahoma and Texas and Arizona because of the actions of Donald Trump. And the question that Joe Biden will pose is if there is a second Trump administration, you're looking at potentially 2 more conservative Supreme Court justices and more decisions which Donald Trump cannot deny that he had a direct impact on.
I think that's so interesting to ask him just point blank what he might vote on that Florida ballot measure, how he might vote. I think it's valid to get him on the record to say, if he's saying states' rights, how is he going to vote? We'll see if President Biden asks him that and whether he answers it. Let me ask you about. Go ahead, Doug.
I think, obviously a lot of policy is going to be prepped for the Biden campaign. But the important thing for Biden, most important, is what does he do when Donald Trump comes out of left field and left field in the gutter? And we saw what he did in the first debate by bringing, various women from Bill Clinton's past to the debate. Obviously, there's no audience for that this time. But what if he talks about how he loves all of his grandchildren? And Joe, will you even acknowledge all of your grandchildren? These kinds of things that could trip Joe Biden up and cause either a senior moment or a really bad answer. Joe Biden's not going to win or lose this debate based on policy. It's going to be on the mud that Donald Trump throws and how he gets it out of his eyes.